5 Heads Together, Chapter 11. Something had to be done. Jerry Muskrat said so. Grandfather Frog said so. Billy Mink said so. Little Joe Otter said so. Even Spotty the Turtle said so. The Laughing Brook couldn't laugh, and the Smiling Pond couldn't smile. You see, there wasn't enough water in either of them to laugh or smile, and nobody knew if there ever would be again. Nobody had ever known anything like it before, and so nobody knew what to think or do. And yet they all felt that something must be done. "What do you think, Billy Mink?" asked Grandfather Frog. Billy Mink looked down from the top of the big rock into the little pool of water that was all there was left at the Smiling Pool. He could see a dozen fat trout in it, and he knew that he could catch them just as easily as not, because there was no place for them to swim away from him. But somehow he didn't want to catch them. He knew that they were frightened almost to death already by the running away of nearly all the water from the Laughing Brook and the Smiling Pool, and somehow he felt sorry for them. "I think that the best thing we can do is to move down to the big river. I've been down there, and that's all right," said Billy Mink. "That's what I think," said Little Joe Otter. "There's no danger that the big river will go dry." "How do you know?" asked Jerry Muskrat. "The Laughing Brook and the Smiling Pond never went dry before." "It's a long, long way down to the big river," broke in Spotty the Turtle, who travels very, very slowly and carries his house with him. "Chug-a-rum! I, for one, don't want to leave the Smiling Pool without finding out what the trouble is. There's nothing happens, as you know, but has a cause to make it so. Now there must be some cause, some reason for this terrible trouble with the Smiling Pool, and if we can find that out, perhaps we shall know better what to do," said Grandfather Frog. Jerry Muskrat nodded his head. "Grandfather Frog is right," said he. "Of course there must be a cause, but where are we to look for it? I've been all over the Smiling Pond, and I'm sure it isn't there." Grandfather Frog actually smiled. "Chug-a-rum," said he. "Of course the cause of all the trouble isn't in the Smiling Pool. Anyone would know that." "Well, if you know so much, tell us where it is then," snapped Jerry Muskrat. "In the Laughing Brook, of course," replied Grandfather Frog. "No such thing," said Billy Mink. "I've been all the way down the Laughing Brook to the big river, and I didn't find a thing." "Have you been all the way up the Laughing Brook to the place it starts from?" asked Grandfather Frog. "No," replied Billy Mink. "Well, that's where the cause of all the trouble is," said Grandfather Frog, just as if he knew all about it. "It's the water that comes down the Laughing Brook that makes the Smiling Pool, and the Smiling Pool never could dry up if the Laughing Brook didn't first stop running." "That's so! I never had thought of that!" cried Little Joe Otter. "I tell you what, Billy Mink and I will go way up the Laughing Brook and see what we can find." "Chug-a-rum! Let us all go," said Grandfather Frog. Then the 5 put their heads together and decided that they would go up the Laughing Brook to hunt for the trouble. Chapter 12. A Hunt for Trouble. Ol' Mistah Buzzard, sailing high in the blue, blue sky, looked down on a funny sight. Yes, sir, it certainly was a funny sight. It was a little procession of 5 of his friends of the Smiling Pool. First was Billy Mink, who, because he is slim and nimble, moves so quickly it sometimes is hard to follow him. Behind him was Little Joe Otter, whose legs are so short that he almost looks as if he hadn't any. Behind Little Joe was Jerry Muskrat, who is a better traveler in the water than on land. Behind Jerry was Grandfather Frog, who neither walks nor runs, but travels with great jumps. Last of all was Spotty the Turtle, who travels very, very slowly because, he carries his house with him. And all 5 were headed up the Laughing Brook, which laughed no more because there was not water enough in it. Now, Ol' Mistah Buzzard hadn't been over near the Smiling Pool for some time, and he hadn't heard how the Smiling Pool had stopped smiling and the Laughing Brook had stopped laughing. When he looked down and saw how the water was so nearly gone from them that the trout and the minnows had hardly enough in which to live, he was so surprised that he kept saying over and over to himself, "For the land's sake! For the land's sake!" Then, when he saw his 5 little friends marching up the Laughing Brook, he guessed right away that it must be something to do with the trouble in the Smiling Pool. Ol' Mr. Buzzard just turned his broad wings and slid down, down out of the blue, blue sky until he was right over Grandfather Frog. "Where yo'alls going?" asked Ol' Mr. Buzzard. "Sugar 'em, to find out what is the trouble with the Laughing Brook," replied Grandfather Frog. "I'll help you," said Ol' Mr. Buzzard, once more sailing up in the blue, blue sky. Grandfather Frog watched him until he was nothing but a speck. "I wish I had wings," sighed Grandfather Frog, and once more began to hop along up the bed of the Laughing Brook. The Laughing Brook came down from the Green Forest and wound through the Green Meadows for a little way before it reached the Smiling Pool. There the sun shone down into it, and Grandfather Frog didn't mind, although his legs were getting tired. But when they got into the Green Forest, it was dark and gloomy. At least Grandfather Frog thought so, and so did Spotty the Turtle, for both dearly loved the sunshine. But still they kept on, for they felt that they must find the trouble with the Laughing Brook. If they found this, they would also find the trouble with the Smiling Pool. So Billy Mink jumped and skipped far ahead, Little Joe Otter ran, Jerry Muskrat walked, for he soon gets tired on land. Grandfather Frog hopped, Spotty the Turtle crawled, and way, way up in the blue, blue sky, Ol' Mr. Buzzard flew, all looking for the trouble which had stopped the laughing of the Laughing Brook and the smiling of the Smiling Pool.